So the Battle of Fort Sumter was the first battle of the Civil War, and the states had shown that they were not willing to play game and be part of the Union. So Robert E. Lee mobilizes his Army of Northern Virginia, the Confederacy, and tries to take the fight to the north, leading to the Battle of Antietam. Now, from 1860 to 1862, Abraham Lincoln had been losing lots of battles, and the Union Army had just not been doing great. Abraham Lincoln had been working on something called the Emancipation Proclamation, which is the document that will free enslaved people. Now, he couldn't give this after a series of losses. He needed a big win. Well, when Robert E. Lee tried to march north, the Union Army met them at Antietam, Maryland, and this will become the deadliest day in American history. 22,000 Americans will die. Okay. But depending on which historian you ask, this battle will ultimately end up in a draw. Well, Abraham Lincoln wanted to seize on the opportunity to say he didn't lose. The battle was decisive enough for the Union to convince Lincoln to deliver the Emancipation Proclamation, the war measure that will free all enslaved people in rebelling states. Now, with this loss, Robert E. Lee had to retreat. So he spends about a year trying to get the army reorganized, and in 1863, Robert E. Lee makes another push up north. He goes to a small town in Gettysburg, and if Robert E. Lee manages to take Gettysburg, he can continue his campaign through the north, going on to Philadelphia, New York, and other major northern cities. Well, the Union Army met Robert E. Lee in battle here, and for 3 days, from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, the Union attempted to repel Robert E. Lee back down to the South. Okay, and this will also be, much like the Battle of Antietam, a massive battle where many people will die. Now, the Union Army is able to repel the Southern Army, and this had a few major impacts. Robert E. Lee was never again able to go as far north as he did here. He didn't have the resources. His troops had been spread too thin. This was also a major victory for the Union Army, which will mark a turning point of the Civil War. Now, Abraham Lincoln had issued the Emancipation Proclamation at this time, and with free people now joining the Union Army, he needed to go a step farther. On April 19th of that year, Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, and this amazing speech will redefine what the purpose of the war was. Remember, Abraham Lincoln had started the war trying to reunify the Union, but Abraham Lincoln will realize that to end the Civil War, slavery will have to go too. So this is the moment where Abraham Lincoln chose to change the goal of the war. Well, down in the South, there was a Union general named William Tecumseh Sherman, and it became his job to crush the morale of the Southern states. Starting in Atlanta, Georgia, Sherman will burn down the city, and he's going to march all the way down to Savannah, Georgia, and his goal is to destroy anything the Confederacy would use, cut off their supplies, and show the Southern people, not just the army, the Southern people, that the war they were fighting was wrong. And he gets a little bit too destructive. He is way too effective. Now, with all the stuff he managed to destroy during his march to the sea in November until December of 1864, he probably shortened the war by a few years. He basically destroyed the supply lines the South had. Well, Robert E. Lee is going to get cornered. The Union Army is going to come up to Richmond, Virginia, and Lee will have to abandon the Confederate capital. He retreats his army to a point in Virginia called Appomattox, and the Union Army pursues him as he flees the capital. At Appomattox, there is a small battle, small skirmish, a few men die, but essentially Robert E. Lee has been captured, and this will be the end of the Civil War at Appomattox Courthouse. Lee will surrender to Ulysses S. Grant here.